I think we're ready. Let's do this thing. Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Dawn Perry, and I will be your moderator for today. I work at the Vermont Community Foundation, and I serve on the board of North Country Animal League. And our mission at NCAL is a simple but a powerful one. It's to promote compassionate and responsible relationships between humans and animals. And I have a hunch that if you're on this webinar today, that means you think that's a particularly good thing. So welcome, and thank you for joining us. Today, we will be talking about protecting what matters, your loved ones, your animals, and your wishes. But before we dive in, just 3 quick housekeeping matters. The first one is we are recording this, and it will be available tomorrow. Jacques will send it out in an email, and he'll also place it on the NCAL website or Facebook. We're still kind of zhuzhing out exactly where it'll be, but you will have a link to it and some additional resources. Secondly, feel free to have yourself on camera, but you certainly don't need to. It's whatever is most comfortable for you. And then the last thing is there is the Q&A on here, so feel free to chat in any questions. We also have some wonderful questions that came in ahead of time that we'll be weaving in. I don't know if you can see all of them, but there's a lot that came in, so thank you for all the questions that you already submitted. So now for the part you came for. NCAL brought together an amazing panel to make these topics more approachable today, and I'm excited for you to meet today's panelists, Ed French, Chris Reed, Emily Pilo-Corbett, and Jacques Dupree. But first, we couldn't help it. We had to show off our furry friends today. This is an NCAL webinar after all, so please meet our pets. They're very cute. Maybe cuter than us, I don't know. But anyway. So on to the programming. To kick things off, I'd love for each of our panelists to introduce themselves and maybe share what inspired you to do the work that you do. And we'll start in the order that we'll do the presentation. So we'll kick off with Ed, then Chris, Emily, and Jacques.
Yes, my name is Ed French. I'm one of the 2 partners at Stackpole and French, main office in Stowe, but we also have offices in Waterbury, Shelburne, Jeffersonville, and maybe more as time goes on. Interesting, the question was, what inspired us to do what we do? I think, I have 7 sisters, and so I had many professions to choose from. My oldest sister, Brenda, is married to a lawyer, and he's the one who encouraged me to go to law school, and it was the best thing I ever did. And then halfway through law school, I was in the post office in Hyde Park, met David Stackpole, and he said, maybe you should come to my office and see what it's like to be a lawyer. That was 1977, never left after that. And we've expanded over the years to do many different things. And, estate planning is a very important part of what we do and a very important subject. We also do litigation, real estate, permitting, all sorts of different things. And many of them relate to estate planning.
Great. Thank you. Chris?
Hi, my name is Chris Reed. I work for Edward Jones. I recently took over for Rich Jacobs here in town. I have an extensive background in banking. That's where I came from originally. I was there for about 6 years. And I really love helping folks plan for the meaning behind their money, including the estate planning being a piece of it. And Ed is a wonderful resource to go to for your estate planning needs. And Spot and Flurry we got from NCAL actually. Spot 3 years ago, Flurry 2 years ago, and we absolutely love our partnership with NCAL as well.
That's beautiful. Emily.
Everyone, my name is Emily Pilo-Corbett, and I am a philanthropic advisor and the director of plan giving at the Vermont Community Foundation. I get the pleasure of working with Dawn on a daily basis, which is so fun. And she shares all about her dog, which is always the most important part of our meetings. At the Community Foundation, we're a family of funds, and our mission is to inspire giving and bring people together to support Vermont. And my role at the foundation is to work with fund holders as well as all the folks that want to have plan giving conversations around estate planning and legacy giving. So that is why I'm here today and excited to answer all these questions and hear from you all. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. And Jacques.
Hi. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Thanks to our wonderful panelists, Dawn for being moderator. My name is Jacques Dupree. I'm the executive director here at North Country Animal League. I've been here for about 2.5 years, in animal sheltering for going on 10 years. I get to work with puppies and kittens every day. And yeah, who wouldn't want that? Since being here at NCAL here in Morristown, we've worked really hard to turn NCAL into more than just a pet adoption center. We've worked really hard to present ourselves as an animal resource center and to really just be a resource to the animals and the people who love them in our community. And I couldn't be more proud of how far the organization has come and of the work we're doing. So yeah, thanks.
That's wonderful. So the first segment of the presentation today will be around why estate planning matters. So Ed, I'd love to turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Don. So when I meet with people, the first thing I lay out is, why are you here? And estate planning is so important because you never know what's going to happen when in your life, and you don't want to leave a mess behind you. And the real goals to make sure that you distribute your assets to those people, those beneficiaries, as we call them, that you want to get your assets after you pass on. That's particularly important in the modern world where people have acquired all sorts of disparate things like real estate interests, et cetera. And most recently, the concept of blended families, unmarried couples, et cetera. So that's a real important thing. Second thing that I tell people is you got to do a plan that avoids the costly and expensive probate process. And that, as I'll say in a minute, includes much more than just a simple will. Because if you're going to have a will, you still have to bring it to probate and it has to be approved, and you have to report into probate every 2 months or accounting every year, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to put together a plan that will get you around that process. And the last thing that, I say in the overall sense is to bring peace of mind to your family and your beneficiaries after you're gone, because they're going to be in the grieving process. They're not going to want to have to search through your papers to find documents, to find insurance policies, to go to probate and sell properties, etc. So what we try to do with people is recommend a comprehensive estate plan, which is more than just a will, as I said. And basically the estate plan, if it's going to be effective, is something that it doesn't only work after you die. It works during your lifetime in certain circumstances. It works in your final days. It works after you die, and then it may even continue on for a long time after that. And so when we put together a plan, we have a comprehensive set of documents that includes most often a living trust arrangement, a revocable trust, they call it, where you title your assets in the name of the trust, which is like a basket that gets all your assets titled in the name of the trust. It's not a separate company. It's just a way to title assets so that when you pass on, you don't have to go to the probate court and get someone appointed to distribute those or do with them whatever you want. During your life, you pick that trusted trustee that's going to take over once you pass on, or even if you become so disabled that you can't deal with your affairs anymore, which often happens here where, people come in and actually turn their affairs over to us as trustees because they just can't handle it anymore. We do powers of attorney, and the power of attorney is something that takes effect if you're just temporarily disabled. For example, you're in the hospital, you need somebody to pay your bills and feel comfortable that your affairs are being taken care of by a trusted person that you choose versus just a random person that a probate court might appoint, or a guardianship proceeding or something like that. And then obviously during the administration and distribution of assets after you die, you're gonna have a person who's picked who literally, and we've seen this hundreds of times, can step in a nanosecond after you pass on and do what you want them to do to carry out your wishes. So we have the trust arrangement, a power of attorney. We recommend and people do what they call advance directives, which are healthcare powers of attorney that are in effect if you are in the hospital on life support, you can't think or act for yourself. You pick a trusted person that will take over that responsibility and act on your behalf. And you can see how important it is to pick that trusted person, because if you don't, in your estate plan, someone else is going to step in, whether it be an outside person or a doctor or something, to make the decisions, and they may not be what you want. We do a will too, but the will, if the estate plan is effective, will never have to be used. It will just pick up the stray assets that you have to take to probate court. You know, it often happens that there's a tax refund that comes in made out to the dead person or something like that. But ideally, everything will be taken care of through the trust. And very importantly, something that you don't hear from every attorney who deals with estate planning, and that is funding of your trust is so important. You don't just set up the skeleton and not put the meat on the bone, so to speak. After you put the documents in place, you have to make sure that your assets are properly titled. Particularly your real property needs to be somehow dealt with through the trust, your investment accounts, your stray assets, as we call them, your timeshares, your camp interests, whatever. So funding is really important. And, you know, frankly speaking, you know, from the standpoint of our firm, that's one of our big strengths, is because we have the depth of people to help funding and to follow up, to not bother people, but remind them that they need to take care of things. We keep lists and we follow up with people until it's done. Because why would we want to get paid for something that doesn't work, you know? As far as cost, you know, people, it's important that, you know, when you come to us or any firm, that you have an idea of what the cost will be. We don't work as a flat fee, but if you do the comprehensive plan, we do most plans in the range of $4,000 or under. Simple plans less. If you've got you know, unusual assets, it sometimes can be more. But, you know, generally, you know, my business partner, Liz Connolly, and I recently taken the position that we try to come in at the most around somewhere around that figure, unless there's an unusual asset or something specifically. And people who deal with this can often, will often know, most often know how much work we're putting in, because we're going to be in touch with them on a regular basis. We're very responsive. The something I thought of as I was preparing for this is that, you know, it'd be nice to tell people, whoever they go to, you know, there are attorneys around who do estate planning. It's important to know what questions you should ask of those people, whoever you go to. And so I wrote some things down that are really important. And you know, what one thing is, can the person that you deal with, the attorney you deal with, help you with the funding aspect of it in all respects? And that involves a knowledge of real estate law, a knowledge of investments. You know, in our case, we have a trusted associate here, Chris, that we can turn to help with investments. You need a contact in that area if you're an attorney. You need to know how timeshares work for people who do that. You need to know how litigation settlements work, et cetera. And we're fortunate in our firm to have all those capabilities and can reach out and help people. There are firms around that are just going to leave you on the doorstep, Second thing, obviously, the cost. And it's, there are people around. I recently lost a client, believe it or not, who said, oh, so-and-so in whatever town can do a trust for me for $500. And I said, I had to laugh because the most that person can be getting is a piece of paper. They're not getting the service that they need to really complete the plan. There's somebody that's just typing out a document and giving it to them. And so you want to ask the question, what am I getting for what I'm paying? I may be not paying much, but the old saying, you get what you pay for. The next thing is, do you have the depth in your firm to deal with funding issues? And can you be responsive to my questions, no matter, and there are people we understand that that will call several times and they'll change the things several times. And we respect that because it's a difficult decision to make when you're trying to deal with your life in the 100 years after. And you need someone who's sympathetic on the other end of the line, and they won't just like give up on you. And that's where someone like Ashley in our office is so helpful. She answers the phone, she's always pleasant, always responsive, and will follow up. You want to ask, how long is it going to take to put the plan together? Because you've gone for 48 years not seeing an attorney. You go into the office, and as you're getting into your car on the way out, you say, I wonder when this is going to be done. And you don't want it to sit there for months. And so you want to find out, in our case, we try to do a 2-month turnaround time, and sooner if people really want it, but you want to ask that question. And the other thing is, and this is important, like with our firm, we've been here since 1963. You're going to want to ask, are you still going to be around when it happens? Because it may be 5 or 10 years, or maybe 20 years from now. We're constantly getting calls from people looking around for wills that they did with attorneys who are no longer in business. We've got in our office, we're bringing on another attorney tomorrow. We're going to have 16, 17 people, and I plan to be here for the next 100 years. Maybe the other people won't, but I will be. And so we're going to be around to answer your questions. And that also leads to the last thing I was going to say, that we also have the capability here, fireproof safe and whatever, to keep your documents safe forever. And we even have, believe it or not, people who've turned over codes to safes to us and that sort of thing. I don't recommend it, but we're there for whatever you might need. Last thing I want to say is that whatever you do, assuming you go the revocable trust route, you keep in mind that it's easy to change. You come back in, and we make that process very simple too, because we keep records of your documents forever, and you can, with the stroke of a pen, add a beneficiary, a new baby, and a new grandchild or whatever, or a new pet. And so the last thing I want to say, thinking of this as walking around today, and even forgot to go to the bank because I remember this story from the past that relates to pets. We had a client who died, and a dear friend of ours, he became a friend. And most people who are with our firm for a long time do become kind of, we're business friends and sometimes real friends. And he had this dog, and it really, to the outside world, including myself, it was kind of an annoying dog, but he loved this dog and the dog loved him. And in his final days, he was in a boarding house someplace and living in a room, and he passed on, and the dog was left there. He had forgotten to really take care of where the dog was going to go, which is part of estate planning. And for a period after he died, a long period, that dog would not leave the bed or room where his master had died, because he was waiting for him to come back. And that shows the connection between people and their pets, and how the pets grieve too, just like
Mhm.
everyone else. And so, when you do your estate plan, don't forget the pets.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. That was the number one question that came in. I think it was, what can I do now to make sure that my pets are safe, secure, and well cared for if something happens to them? So I heard obviously estate plan. Is there anything else that you would
Yeah,
suggest?
as a part of that, Don,
Mhm.
I talked about how easy it is to change. With our trust, you can leave with the trust a side letter with specific instructions and, not specific instructions about big assets like your house,
Mhm.
whatever, but like your pets are gonna change over time. So you can, without having to redo the plan or coming back into our office, you just leave a letter indicating your wishes in regard to pets and artwork and other things that are important to you.
Artwork of pets. Yes.
Yes.
One question that came up also is, what is the difference between a will and a trust?
Yeah, the will, just briefly touch upon it. If you have just a will, when you pass on, your named executor, your representative, has to take that will to probate, file a proceeding, pay a fee, which interestingly enough, with the value of your average estate, the fee is gonna be somewhere near what you pay to do an estate plan, when you get right down to it. And get it approved by the court, give notice to all the beneficiaries, file accountings, file for license to sell, et cetera. It's a big process. Whereas if you have a trust and a trusted trustee, a person you trust, then within a minute, like I said, nanosecond after you pass on, the trustee can step in and just do everything. They step into your shoes. We had the case where the guy died and he had 9 properties. He put them in trust when he had terminal cancer 2 weeks before he died. The family took over those properties the minute he died. If they had just had a will done, it would have been years to do that. So it's a great concept.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you so
Mhm.
much. So that sums up the part on estate planning, and now we're going to talk about financial planning and tax smart giving with Chris.
Hi, everyone. So I partner with Ed for estate planning with my clients. I also partner with my client's CPA, and that's where I differentiate myself amongst other financial advisors, is before I make a recommendation, we're going to consult the other experts in the tax and legal aspects of what your overall plan is. So I know that the panelists had quite a few questions about financial planning as well. So let's get into it.
All right, let's get into it. So one of the questions Jacques shared during the planning call that we had was that several NCAL donors give through their qualified charitable distributions. Can you explain what QCDs are and how they work for anyone that might not have heard of them?
Yes, so those are relating to the RMDs, or required minimum distributions, that are taken out of a pre-tax or traditional retirement account, such as an IRA. Here at my office, at other Edward Jones offices, other financial advisors, that's age 73 currently, but if you're not 73 before 2030, it's now being bumped out to age 75. It's a certain percentage of what's in your portfolio, and the closer you get to age 100, that amount increases every year. So a QCD is a way you can send out your RMD without it counting potentially as income. I can't really speak on the tax piece of that. That's something I need to meet with your CPA with you on as well, but that's one way to potentially avoid upping your income to another level where you're going to have to pay in more, possibly.
Perfect. And how does that work with, for example, like an NCAL? What did they need to do to specify like an NCAL or a different charity as part of that?
Yeah, so if their IRA is here as being one of my clients, I can literally transfer the money from their IRA with their RMD to NCAL's account. And when the CPA that I would be partnering with would be filing their taxes, then they would be made aware of that, and that would help with that piece of things.
Thank you. We had a question on here. If I haven't considered charitable giving as part of my financial plan, where is the first place to start?
Sorry, do you mind repeating that?
Yeah, so it's if I haven't considered charitable giving as a part of my financial plan, where is the first place I should start?
Yeah, so that's actually pretty simple. So you'd want to have a joint meeting with someone like myself, a financial advisor, and your CPA or tax advisor to put together an extensive plan of how to do that. And also make sure to do the estate planning piece with Ed or another reputable firm that will be as extensive as him. Because he did bring up some good points about you don't want a lawyer or a firm to not go all the way through with you and leave you on the curb.
Yeah, very good point. And then another question that came in was about an overall financial plan and like where does planned giving fit in with an overall financial plan?
Yeah, so that's usually a piece that we'd be talking with your CPA on and determining the specific scenario to you because everyone's income is different. Some people are married, some people are single filers, and some people own businesses. So it's really specific to each scenario, and it's something I would need to discuss with those specific people.
Okay, got it. So then maybe this can be a one that it's like an Ed Chris tag team that we can see in real time. But a question came in on charitable remainder trusts. How does that work, Ed, or maybe with a little help from Chris, like because you take an income from it, but it also allows you to be charitable. Maybe you could talk us through that process.
Yeah, Chris, maybe give the financial perspective and I can add something in you.
Right. So with a charitable remainder trust, it's a way that you can still take care of your family for, say, one generation, and then pass on the remainder of your assets to a charity of your choice.
Yeah. And then, just a simple example that I often use with people that if you have an investment and so many people, I use the example of like Union Bank stock. If you have Union Bank stock and you never really intend to sell that, you own it for the dividend and you keep buying more because we live in a regional community, then you could easily make a charitable gift of the underlying stock and get a tax deduction, but still during your lifetime and even beyond, continue to get the dividends. And that's just like a simple example. And then you can go from that, you can get into really complicated charitable remainder trusts where, we have one going where the asset becomes of value after 20 years, and for large estates, it can really save you a lot of money.
That's great. Thank you. Really helpful. Maybe Jacques, as part of the follow-up, also we could do like just a little summary of all the tools that are mentioned today, because there's so many of them and there's so many acronyms for all of them that maybe that could be like a little thing that we make at the end. Wonderful, perfect. So those were the questions specific, Chris, for that element of it. But is there anything else that you'd like to share for the attendees? No
Well,
pressure.
well, basically, the sooner you start with planning for your future, the better, because I know that every single one of you on this Zoom have meaning behind your assets, whether it be real property, whether it be your investments, your bank accounts, and that you want it to go to somebody or something important to you someday. So it's very important to start on that as soon as possible. And just because you're making the plan doesn't mean you're going to die soon. Just remember that.
It doesn't jinx you in any way. That's good advice. No.
Right.
No,
That's
well, if
wonderful.
I could just briefly add to
Yeah.
that, sorry to jump back in, but yeah, the sooner you get started too, that as you think about things, your mind changes and over time it will change. We see so many people coming in when they're 90. It's hard to think about what you want to do then, get it right.
Yeah, that's great. Great point. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Chris. Emily, we're going to turn it over to you now. You've been so quiet and respectful while everyone else is talking, but we'd love to hear your perspective on philanthropy and planned giving.
Sure. Yes, I think one of the things that I hope is coming through clear to the group is that it is really important to put a team together. So as each of the panelists have said, we each kind of specialize in certain areas, but in order to really get the best plan in place, you really need to have everyone your team so that you can make sure that all of your wishes are being considered as you put a plan together. One thing I'll add just to the conversation thus far is that oftentimes, I mean, the folks that we work with are often like-minded, and they're asking about, how do you want to include charity in your will, and how do you want to do that, or in your estate plan generally. If you're not being asked that question, bring it up, because it's important. And if that's something that's really important to you, that you should make sure that that's included in your plans. So I just say that because not everyone asks that question, which feels so crazy from everyone here who is charitably inclined. But yeah, make sure that that's on your must-have list as you're putting your plan together. So one thing I thought I'd start with that we talked about as a group that people are often thinking about is, how do you strike the balance between being generous and charitable and supporting your family? So this is often a question that comes up as folks are starting to work with a philanthropic advisor. So there's a couple things that I would have you all consider, which is first, define your financial priorities. So what's non-negotiable for you? What are your family's needs? Are you hoping to help them with housing and school and education, healthcare, making sure there's emergency savings, retirement planning, all of those things? And as again, everyone has already mentioned, your plan should be something that's ever evolving. So if you're sitting down when you're 40s and 50s and creating a plan, you have children, you want to support your children, you should do that at whatever level makes sense to you. And then include charity and nonprofits as you can, maybe a percentage of your estate. Fast forward 30 years and you're in your late 70s, you might have adult children who have now their own careers and their own retirement plans, and all those, they may be financially okay. So you can shift and define those priorities as life comes at you and all those different things happen. So you can, I guess the point is, you can do both. You can support your family members, and you can also support a nonprofit or nonprofits that are important to you. Another thing to consider, so think about the priorities, what's most important, what's non-negotiable, and then create a budget. So if there are specific amounts or percentages, working with your financial advisor, maybe there's a retirement plan that might be the best use of assets for charity versus other assets that you might have, real estate or other, think about what makes sense for you and what budget would make sense for you in your personal situation. And there's lots of tax efficient ways to give and support your family members. So again, think about all those different things. And I think that's really it. My main point in this is just to, think about, revisit your plan regularly, and there's no right or wrong answer. That really, it's about what is important to you. Supporting your family is 100% a great idea. If that's what you want to do, and you can do both things. Do you want me to keep going? Because I have a couple other things, or do you want to ask a couple of questions, Dawn?
No, keep going if
Okay.
you're going, and then I'll circle around after. Thank you.
Okay.
But I wrote that for I have to do that summary at the end. I've been assigned, and I have put a team together. So thank you for that. Great one.
Okay, good. Another question that we get all the time as philanthropic advisors is, how do I support multiple causes? Should I focus my impact? Should I not? And it's a tough question. So what we do at the foundation is we have a lot of different tools that we work with that are essentially open-ended questions to help you think about what is of most importance to you. Generally, it's kind of a broad, we think about maybe creating a mission statement for you as an individual or family members about what is really the most important to you. Are things like, creating a legacy important to you? Is it most important to you to provide sustaining support to the nonprofits that you've been giving to year over year, so that they don't feel like they're out of supporting and being able to be supported once you're no longer here? And then we dig down a little bit deeper and we think about why do you care about these certain causes and what's going to help you focus in your giving. We also talk about giving style. What is your, preferred impact? Do you want to, again, give one lump sum? Do you want to give multiple years? Do you want to create an endowment? All those different things. So there is ways to create, again, strategies around multiple causes. You don't have to be super focused and have only pick one nonprofit, no matter what the amount is. I think many of you on this call are probably animal supporters. So there's a lot of different ways. You can support your local animal shelter. You can support, broader national organizations. And you can, also support environmental or climate change or other things that are interest to you. So do whatever feels right. And we work with you to kind of understand what that means for you, where your values align, things like that. I think the last thing I'd like to mention is because we have a real life example, is that there's lots of different tools, charitable giving tools. And Dawn, as she mentioned, we can give you a list. Charitable Remainder Trust is an example of that. A beneficiary designation of retirement plan, another example of a charitable tool. But folks often, a bequest, which is leaving something in your will and your trust, essentially as part of your planned gift, is huge. The wealth transfer is occurring. There is a lot of opportunity to be charitable. So oftentimes folks will come to us and they'll say, I want to set up something that will be sustaining supporter for this organization. So we have this person who came to us. She has now passed away. So her attorney and her trustee were working together to put together what we call at the foundation a donor designated fund, which is an endowment fund. And what happens is the money comes to the foundation, creates this endowment fund, it's invested, and then on an annual basis, we send a check directly to the nonprofit. In this instance, they've chosen NCAL as the beneficiary, which is super exciting. And it is being funded with a lot of different pieces of their estate, some from a sale of real estate and other things, appreciated stock, things like that. And it's a great option. So now this is the legacy that's going to be set up for this person, and one of her favorite nonprofits, NCAL, will be able to be supported for years to come in perpetuity. So that's just an example of one way that you can put an estate plan together and have a planned gift. So I could keep talking for years, but let's hand it back over for either more questions or open it up or everything.
Yeah. So one question specific to planned giving and then also just giving is donor advised funds. It's something that hasn't come up today. How does that work, and what do people really need to know about it and how they can support charities?
I can start and then probably push it to Chris too.
Okay.
He probably has some insights, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So donor advised funds is one type of fund that we host here at the Vermont Community Foundation. Donor advised funds are set up during your lifetime. So it's similar to what you can think of it as a charitable checking account. So you set it up now during your lifetime. Often you'll be recommended to set something up, a donor advised fund, when you've had a life event, sold a business, you just have, wealth, you've maybe inherited wealth, and you're charitably inclined. So you set up the fund, the donor advised fund, and then you work with a philanthropic advisor to make out grants to nonprofits that are important to you. some folks come to us specifically at the Community Foundation and they've never been able to give at a large amount. Have never really thought about their interests. Maybe they've given to like their local food shelf and their local humane society, and they've, cut their library, things like that, but they haven't really kind of put a plan together to see, what can I have, what kind of impact can I make here? So we work on putting that together. And then again, you give during your lifetime. Afterlife, there's a couple different options for succession planning. Sometimes it then gets passed down to the next generation. Sometimes it then essentially the donor advised fund closes and it creates a different type of fund. So every donor advised fund organization that offers donor advised funds does things, I think, a little differently. But at the Community Foundation, you can then, as an example, set up a donor advised fund, give to lots of different organizations throughout your lifetime. And then in the succession plan can be, I want to just now set up, 3 different endowment funds for the 3 different, organizations that I want to support. And then essentially it's like set it and forget it model. So that's one option. But it's a giving during your lifetime, setting up your plan during your lifetime, which we encourage if you can.
And Chris, is there
Chris,
anything you
yeah.
did want to add to that?
You pretty much covered it all about donor advised funds. We have a large national partner that we use donor advised funds with, but I'm sure Emily does an amazing job too, so definitely go to her. Another big way of giving is with those QCDs for your RMDs, the specific type of trust that Ed and I had talked about, and then also transferring, like Ed was talking about as well, about transferring those large unrealized stocks to the charity and how it could be beneficial to both of you.
That's
Yeah.
great. Actually, on that point, non-cash assets, we touched on it kind of in a couple different places, but does anyone want to give just like kind of a summary on some of the types of non-cash assets that could be put into such a trust?
Yeah, so like stocks, bonds, if you're selling real estate, I believe you'd want a donor advised fund versus transferring that directly to NCAL, but those are just some examples.
Yeah,
Great.
can be basically any fixed asset, Don, that where you can, like I said earlier, in many cases get the benefits during your lifetime, and then after that, I won't say you don't care, but you want to give it to a good cause. Just in general, and sitting here and talking, it makes you think back, NCAL is so well established in the community, been here a long time, done a great thing for all of us. I take my walk every morning and I see people walking their dogs, etc. And I always make sure to tell people when they come in the office, like who do you want to benefit? It's your children, but people are very attached to their pets. They're members of the family. And so they should fit into any estate plan too, let's face it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's a great place to kind of pivot over to Jacques a little bit and learn what does that really mean to NCAL, these types of gifts. Would you mind if I punted a few of the questions over to you?
Yeah, sure. And I can start just by saying, Dawn, if you don't mind. So obviously charitable giving is our everything, right? NCAL is a 501c3 nonprofit. We don't receive any state or federal funding. We're not affiliated with any national organizations, and we rely 100% on the funding or from the donor dollars from individuals in our community, right? Obviously, planned giving is so important in that whole scheme of things because it takes it a step up. It really helps us to think about the future versus just the sort of day to day. So charitable giving, planned giving, NCAL wouldn't exist without it. And all this great advice, everything we're talking about today is so important to us. So.
That's great. That's great. I know there's this one memorable story that I've had the benefit of hearing a few times, but maybe you could share, the story I mean about, go for it.
Yeah, of course. So So yeah, NCAL was very fortunate, obviously, to receive a bequest in someone's will, a lady's will, and she was deeply devoted to her cats. She had 4, and part of her estate plan included sort of both the financial bequest to NCAL and very specific instructions for the care of her 4 cats. So her estate reached out to NCAL, obviously broke the news, but asked us to help with the rehoming of the 4 cats. Those cats came to us with a pet trust that ensured their lifelong care, right? So each of their new caretakers received an annual stipend to continue providing medical care, food, even toys. And the trust even includes a $500 reward to the new caretakers every year. And I just think it speaks a lot on just how much she cared for those animals. NCAL pretty much, I mean, we benefit obviously from the bequest. We were able to help with the rehoming of the pets. But importantly, the trust was administered by the estate attorney, not NCAL. So it just ensured that the donor's wishes were carried out exactly as intended. Of course, all 4 cats were adopted in no time. They each got adopted separately, and just the response from their new families was very heartwarming.
Yeah,
So.
but that's beautiful that you can step in and, like, how to vet people for adopting animals, right? So just kind of knowing that that's being taken care of is beautiful.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. And actually the cats were with NCAL for maximum a week. So we opted to keep the cats in the home. They had a caretaker, so it wasn't too stressful for the cats either. They just stayed in the home, quickly came to NCAL. We vetted them, vetted the families, and they were adopted. So really no stress on their part.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then just thinking ahead, when NCAL gets a legacy gift, a little one like Emily was talking about is coming NCAL's way. Like, what does that make possible at an organization like this in the future that maybe wouldn't otherwise be possible?
Yeah. So obviously, a legacy gift made today ensures that NCAL will still be here. It really looks at the future. It will help us meet the needs of the animals, the people in the community who love them for 10, 20 years in the future. And these gifts really help us plan for the future. It could mean we extend medical services like our spay neuter, low cost veterinary services, stronger safety net programs, and then just more adoption and life-saving programs. So it really helps us not to have to just fundraise for the sort of now's issues, but it helps us plan for the future. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. And since you did mention a pet trust and it wasn't something that came up before, not to put you on the spot again, Ed, I keep coming back to you, but like, is there anything you'd like to mention about pet trusts and how they work?
Definitely. Because it reminds me of the situation I kind of touched upon when we were preparing for this scenario here, is that the idea of having a pet trust, or part of your trust dealing with your valuable and dear pets, basically, is so important, because your trustee then, once you pass on, can immediately implement that without having to go and ask anybody anything, and set up accounts and take care of those cats that need immediate help. And I think I started to tell you the story briefly of earlier you said, what's the difference between a trust and a will? Well, I dealt with the person that just had the will and not the trust. And there was some reference to the dog in the will. This was many years ago, but it's a story that sticks with me. And it ended up that 2 of the beneficiaries fought in probate court. They had a proceeding where they argued before the judge about who would get the dog. By the time it was over, all the money in the estate was spent by the attorneys, and it was gone. So have the trust. Don't just do the will.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question. Ed, do all attorneys, like, is a pet trust, is there something specific? Like, can every attorney do a pet trust, or is that
Yeah,
something that,
if you do trusts in general, yeah, you could easily add a provision relating to a pet trust. There's no specific
Mhm.
form for that, really. Yeah.
That's
If
great.
the more the complicated issues come where you get into what you and Chris were talking about, specialized trust vehicles. That's it. Not every attorney does charitable trusts, et cetera, but just a simple pet trust is something you can easily work in.
Mhm.
Perfect. Thank you. So we're at kind of 10 minutes of, it's our big Q&A session now. So if we can go back to some of the other additional questions, and then I have the little box open. So if anyone that's listening thought of a question from anything that was said during the session today, please feel free to put it in there. In the meantime, I'm just going to go back to some of the questions that came in earlier, but I will keep watching that area. Okay, so one of the questions is for Ed, and it's around if someone doesn't think that they necessarily have the right number of assets for a will or a trust, like what would you say to them?
That's a question that comes up often because people will come in and say, I just need a simple will because it's just my house and my bank account and maybe a modest investment account. Um, it's actually many people in, I won't even say, not even modest situation, many people in reasonable situations who need trust more than someone who has a multitude of assets, because people who have many assets can title them themselves and deal with the succession planning and have sophisticated vehicles. But the problem is if you've got the house, the investment account, and an interest in a camp someplace, and you end up in probate court, you're dead. I mean, you're going to spend so much money, useless money, or your family is, that they're going to get a lot less than they otherwise would, and you're going to spend a lot more money in probate court. So yeah, the trust is for virtually everyone. I mean, even the most modest people that come in could benefit. Now, there are cases where, yes, they can't afford them, so to speak, but we work with those people too, because I hate to see anybody unserved that comes to see us.
And then one other question that came in is, if someone is married, does the surviving spouse automatically inherit their property, belonging, and pets, or does it depend on what's like kind of written?
It depends. If you don't have a will, and you are married to the wife you have always had, and your children are from that marriage, then the wife inherits everything. But there are more and more families, maybe there always have been, where someone has a prior marriage and prior children, or even a prior relationship and a prior child. And if you don't have a will, then in that circumstance, your current spouse gets half, and the other half goes to the prior family. Can't tell you how many times that has come up, and it has caused so much tension in the family. Had the case where, the current wife had to fight with the prior children about how to divide up the furniture in the house. I mean, it really, because let's face it, in many of those circumstances, there's tension already because, oh, my father went off and found this other young woman and he married, and we've always hated her. She married him just for his money, so we're going to get it back. Yeah, so yes, don't some estate in that case, at the very least, have a will, even if you don't have a trust.
Yeah. And then we just got a real-time question in, which is, are trusts individual only, or are they combined if you're married?
We have found over the years that most people we deal with, although we go back and forth, we can do a family trust. There's no doubt about it. But most often we incline toward a mirror image trust, one for the husband, one for the wife, one for the partner, one for the other partner, however it works. And recently, that we constantly find reasons why that works. And most recently, it was kind of interesting. We dealt with a couple and we said, oh, this maybe what we'll do is a family trust, and combine the two in the same trust. Liz and I were, Liz Connolly, my partner, and I were talking here in the office, and we said, oh, we could do that, but what social security number do we use for the trust? And so we ended up splitting it apart because, the husband has his trust with his social security number and the one. So we constantly come back to that same issue.
That's great. Thank you. And I do have a couple more questions. Mainly they're around will, and I know that a lot of the conversation is like the will is just the basic thing that the trust really protects you. But one of the questions is about changing a will and what the process is for making updates if circumstances change. I know you
Yes.
talked about your team will do that, but since someone asked specifically, maybe we could.
Yeah, no, so, in our office and in most offices,
Yep.
with modern technology, if an attorney does a will, most often it's still on the computer in some form, for the next many years, decades, whatever. And so changing it is very simple. You go back in and you can do it one of two ways. You can either, if the changes are extensive enough to change the will, you just print it off with the changes again. And then you can also do what they call a codicil to the will, which is, let's say you've appointed an executor and that person has died. You can do a one sentence, really, codicil, they call it, to change your executor, and you don't have to go back and redo the whole will. That being said, you can't just write it up in your home. You got to go in and get it. You got to get it signed appropriately. And that's why it's good to go back to the person that prepared the will, even if it's simple, to make sure it's done right.
Thank you.
And to
And then a
make sure that when the family comes and seeks the will, you don't get half of it and not the thing that was changed.
Right. And then a question for Emily, which is, why would someone choose a designated fund rather than just making a large one-time gift?
That's a good question. So I think my answer is it depends. So it depends, I think, on the donor's intent, the donor's wishes. In the instance that I mentioned earlier, they were really interested in that sustaining support, that year over year, that NCAL could, plan it and add programming or whatever the needs are, as opposed to one large gift, that sometimes, depending on the nonprofit, also can be stressful, depending on the size of the gift. So, a multi-million-dollar gift coming into a nonprofit is exciting, but also means like, oh, what does that mean now? Do we have the financial process in place? Do we invest it? Do we not invest it? It can lead to lots of questions. So sometimes it's easier for folks to leave and open a donor designated fund or some sort of fund at the foundation that then supports the nonprofit. The other thing that people often like is, we're seeing it now in these kind of federal changes, that things ebb and flow that are far out of our control. There's lots of variables. So setting something up at the foundation or creating some sort of endowment fund at an organization that is not the nonprofit can create some security for the donor, that they know that, okay, that money will be set aside and will be, with the purpose to support the nonprofit forever. And if a nonprofit goes out of existence for whatever reason, that whoever is holding that asset will figure out what happens to it next. And in our instance at the foundation, what we would do if a nonprofit went out of existence is we would then step back and say, okay, what was the donor intent? Is there another nonprofit doing something similar? Did they merge with another organization? And we kind of like slowly edge out from like wherever the city or the town or the, was, and kind of and edge out into kind of, okay, now let's support the region, then let's support the state. So anyway, the money always stays in Vermont and supports whatever cause they were interested in supporting. That's just one reason.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. So just in my quick takeaways, I know we're coming up at time. And I would love to, Ed, I'm going to try to type up your questions. I thought those were really great for people to go in, like just like bulletize your questions. It's like, why are you here? Putting a plan around the process, giving yourself peace of mind, funding the plan, super important, a comprehensive estate plan, the cost of the plan. There's the elements around that Chris mentioned around QCDs and RMDs and charitable remainder trusts. The idea from Emily of putting a team together is so important. And then obviously what it means for NCAL when you do those things. So I think that is, and did I miss anything, guys? Is that pretty much it?
You got it. And Don, if I could just add one final
Yeah.
thing, is that our office does not bill out until we establish a business arrangement with people, and I encourage people, feel free to call me and ask me any question. And I'd be happy to take the call. I love to hear people's story and I love to meet people, so.
Oh, that's great.
I'd
And
like
we
to-
did just get one more question, if I could pester you guys just to answer it, because it's a good one, maybe. Let's see, when creating a team to help with estate planning, who should you start with? Like, for instance, if you start with Ed's firm, will they or someone else help you create a team that would cover everything you may need? How do you plan costs for that?
I think you would start, and Chris can jump in too. You can start either with someone like Chris or with me, and then that person will bring in the appropriate people. But yes, it's who you feel comfortable going to first, right, Chris? I mean, like, for example, Chris comes to me because people have trusted him with their money, and then he reaches out to me. People come to me because we've handled their house sale, and it leads to which is very interesting. We get most of our work that way, from either Chris or from other work we do for people.
Great, thank you. I wanted to get that in since it
I don't know,
just
Chris,
came in.
any other comment there?
Yeah, very
Yeah.
well said. And just know too, yes, it can be expensive working with a financial advisor. However, you can call me up, meet with me, and I'm never going to charge you by appointment. It's all about management of your assets and how you choose to do business here. So you're never going to get charged by appointment.
And I should just add, I asked Chris if there's anything that we wanted to make sure that, that he gets something for his time. And he's like, I'm just here because I support NCAL and I believe in the cause. So he's also just a super nice guy. Any other panelists, any closing remarks before I send us off?
I'm just here because it's been fun.
Even better.
Let's do this again. This has been great.
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, our panelists, Ed, Emily, Chris, and Jacques, for sharing your insights. And thank you, everybody, for joining today. We will send the recording soon. We'll send some additional resources in there, some of the notes that we took from the session. So on behalf of NCAL and the Vermont Community Foundation, thank you for spending your time with us today, and we hope that you stay connected.
Thank you. Thanks, Dawn. Thanks, Ed, Chris, Emily. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Same.
Very
Thank you,
much.
everybody. Talk soon.